It was a chilly October evening, the eve of Halloween, and I found myself drawn to an old, dilapidated mansion known as Hollow Hill. The mansion had long been abandoned and was rumored to be haunted. Its foreboding presence loomed over the town, casting a shadow that seemed to grow darker with each passing year. As a journalist with a penchant for uncovering mysteries, I couldn't resist the allure of this ominous place. The townsfolk spoke in hushed tones about the mansion's history. It was said that over a century ago, a wealthy family named the Harringtons had lived there. The family had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a legacy of dark secrets. Some believed that their spirits still haunted the mansion, unable to rest in peace. Armed with a flashlight, a notebook, and a determination to uncover the truth, I made my way to Hollow Hill on that fateful night. The mansion's imposing gates creaked open, as if welcoming me into its eerie embrace. The full moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow on the mansion's crumbling facade. I couldn't help but shudder as I took my first step onto the overgrown path leading to the front door. The air inside the mansion was thick and musty, and I could hear the faintest whispers of a chilling breeze. It seemed as if the very walls held the mansion's secrets, waiting to be unearthed. My footsteps echoed through the dimly lit hallways as I explored room after room. Old portraits stared at me with cold, unblinking ease, and the dust-laden furniture lay in a state of perpetual disarray. As I ventured deeper into the mansion, I became increasingly aware of a presence, an unsettling feeling that I was not alone. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision, and I could hear faint, distant laughter, like a melancholic echo from the past. The mansion was alive with a sinister energy, and it seemed to revel in my unease. In one of the drawing rooms, I discovered a grand piano, its keys stained with age and neglect. It was said that young Emily Harrington, the daughter of the family, had been an accomplished pianist. As I reached out to touch the keys, a haunting melody filled the room, as if an invisible hand played the piano. It was both beautiful and mournful, and it sent shivers down my spine. In the midst of the spectral music, I heard a whispered name, Emily. It was as if the very walls of the mansion were trying to communicate with me. I continued to explore, my heart pounding in my chest, determined to uncover the truth about the Harrington family. As I ascended a creaking staircase, I reached a hallway adorned with a series of paintings. The portraits depicted the Harrington family at different stages of their lives. One, in particular, caught my attention. It showed a young Emily Harrington with her striking blue eyes and a mischievous smile. She held a delicate porcelain doll in her hand, and her gaze seemed to pierce through time itself. Beside the portrait was a plaque that read, Emily Harrington, 1898-1910. Emily had met an untimely demise at the age of 12, and the mansion had never been the same since. I couldn't help but feel a connection to her, as if she was guiding me deeper into the mansion's secrets. I followed the trail of the spectral melody to the attic. The air grew colder and the atmosphere more oppressive as I climbed the stairs. The attic was filled with dusty old trunks and forgotten relics. But what drew my attention was a small ornate mirror that hung on one of the walls. It was different from the other items in the attic. It seemed out of place. I approached the mirror, and as I gazed into it, I saw a reflection that was not my own. The mirror revealed a vision of the past, a glimpse into the life of the Harringtons. I saw Emily, a lonely child, sitting at the piano, playing the haunting melody. Her family stood around her, their faces etched with worry. The melody grew louder, and I could hear whispered conversations about an entity that had taken hold of Emily. The vision shifted, and I saw Emily's parents desperately trying to rid the mansion of this malevolent presence. They performed a ritual, chanting incantations and drawing strange symbols on the floor, but their efforts were in vain, and the entity only grew more powerful. I was jolted from the vision when I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I turned to find a translucent figure standing before me. It was Emily Harrington. Her eyes bore into mine, and she spoke with a voice that was both melancholic and filled with longing. "Help me," she pleaded. I could see the pain in her eyes, and I knew that I had to uncover the truth and put her spirit to rest. Emily guided me to a hidden room in the attic, a room that had remained untouched for over a century. Inside, I found a journal belonging to Emily herself. It detailed her experiences, her encounters with a malevolent entity that had tormented her, and her desperate attempts to save her family. I learned that the entity had grown in power, feeding on the fear and despair of the Harringtons. Emily had made the ultimate sacrifice to protect her family, but her spirit had remained trapped in the mansion, unable to find peace. As I read the journal, I felt a presence drawing closer. The malevolent entity that had haunted Hollow Hill for so long manifested before me, a shadowy figure with hollow eyes and a sinister grin. It sought to prevent me from unraveling the truth. With the knowledge from Emily's journal, I confronted the entity, reciting the incantations and symbols I had seen in the vision. The room shook with a malevolent force, and the entity let out a blood-curdling scream. I could feel the energy in the mansion shifting, as if the very walls were sighing with relief. As the ritual reached its climax, the entity was banished, and the mansion was freed from its dark influence. Emily's spirit appeared one last time, her eyes filled with gratitude before she disappeared, finally finding the peace she had longed for. Hollow Hill was no longer haunted, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The mansion seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, as if it had been waiting for this moment for over a century. As I left the mansion, I couldn't help but wonder if Emily's spirit would finally find the solace she deserved. The townsfolk soon learned of the mansion's transformation, and it became a place of solace and reflection, a tribute to the Harrington family. Hollow Hill was no longer a place of fear, but a testament to the enduring power of truth and redemption. The island, now shrouded in a thick veil of darkness, had become a place of haunting legends. Its very name, Despair Island, sent shivers down the spines of the townsfolk. They avoided it at all costs, except for one night a year, Halloween. Halloween was the one night when the island came alive, or rather when the spirits of the past returned to haunt the living. On this night, the barrier between the living and the dead was said to be at its thinnest, and the island became a focal point for supernatural activity. As the sun dipped below the horizon on Halloween night, the townsfolk gathered at the harbour. They carried lanterns and candles, their faces painted with eerie designs, and they wore costumes that ranged from the whimsical to the truly terrifying. It was a night of celebration and remembrance, a night when the living paid their respects to the restless spirits of Despair Island. I, however, could never bring myself to join in the festivities. The memories of that fateful night in the lighthouse haunted me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the malevolent entity still lurked on the island. But this year was different. As I walked through the town, I heard whispers of a prophecy that had been passed down through the generations. It spoke of a lighthouse keeper who would return on Halloween night, seeking redemption for the sins of the past. The townsfolk believed that I was the one mentioned in the prophecy, the keeper who would confront the malevolent entity and put an end to the island's curse. Reluctantly, I made my way to the harbour where the townsfolk had gathered. The atmosphere was electric, filled with a strange mix of excitement and trepidation. As I stepped onto a boat that would take me to the island, I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. The boat approached Despair Island, and I could see the lighthouse in the distance, its silhouette against the moonlit sky. The light had not been rekindled since that fateful night, and the island had become a place of darkness and despair. As I stepped onto the island, I felt an otherworldly chill settle over me. The wind carried the distant echoes of a mournful melody, and the ground beneath my feet seemed to pulsate with a malevolent energy. I made my way to the lighthouse, my footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. The townsfolk followed, their lanterns and candles casting eerie shadows on the walls of the lighthouse. I climbed the winding staircase to the lantern room, my heart pounding in my chest. As I reached the top, I felt a presence drawing closer, the same entity that had consumed Thomas and me on that fateful night. The lantern room was bathed in a pale, ghostly light. I gazed at the lamp, which remained extinguished and shattered from the explosion. The entity materialized before me, a shadowy figure with hollow eyes and a malevolent grin. "You have returned," it hissed. "You seek redemption, but it is too late. I am the curse of this island, and I will never be vanquished." As the entity drew closer, I raised my lantern, which had been filled with a special oil provided by the townsfolk. The lantern emitted a brilliant, silvery light that pushed back the darkness and weakened the entity. With every step, I recited words of ancient incantations, passed down through the generations. The entity writhed and screamed, its form flickering like a dying flame. It knew that it was losing its grip on the island. As the entity dwindled, I felt a strange sense of closure. It whispered one final, chilling warning before it was banished into the darkness. "Beware," it said. "The curse may be vanquished, but the past can never be undone." The townsfolk watched in awe as the lighthouse was bathed in the silvery light, and the malevolent entity was cast out. The island seemed to sigh with relief, and for the first time in years, the lighthouse beacon was rekindled, casting its light far and wide. Halloween on Despair Island was transformed. The townsfolk celebrated, not in fear, but in joy and gratitude. The curse had been broken, and the island was free from its malevolent grip. As the years passed, the legend of the lighthouse keeper who had returned on Halloween night grew. Each year, the townsfolk gathered on the island to celebrate, and they knew that the keeper's sacrifice had brought peace to Despair Island. And so, on every Halloween night, the island came alive with light and laughter, a testament to the enduring power of redemption and the belief that even the darkest of places could find solace in the light of hope.
It was a night like no other. Halloween. The air was thick with the promise of candy and costumes. A full moon hung low in the sky, casting eerie shadows on the street. This was the night I'd been waiting for all year. But little did I know, it would be a Halloween to remember for all the wrong reasons. My friends and I, Sarah, Mark, and Lisa, had planned the perfect Halloween night. We'd chosen an old abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town for our spooky adventure. The stories about the place were legendary, tales of ghosts, curses, and something far more sinister. We were excited, looking for a real thrill on Halloween, but none of us could have predicted just how terrifying our night would become. As we approached the mansion, its towering, crumbling facade seemed to leer at us. The moonlight painted it in eerie shades of grey, and the wind whistled through broken windows, creating an unsettling harmony. Our flashlights pierced the darkness as we crept inside. The interior was as chilling as the outside. Wallpaper peeled away from the walls, revealing faded, disturbing paintings. Rats scurried in the corners, and the air was heavy with the smell of decay. It was the perfect setting for a Halloween adventure, but we didn't realize how real the horror would be. We decided to explore the house together, sticking close to one another. We ventured through creaking hallways and climbed up a winding, decrepit staircase, our flashlights revealing only fragments of the horrors that lay in wait. The atmosphere grew steadily more oppressive, and we couldn't help but feel watched. As we entered a dimly lit room on the second floor, I felt a shiver run down my spine. A faded, ornate mirror hung on the wall, its surface cracked and tarnished. In its reflection, I saw a fleeting, shadowy figure that sent a chill through my very soul. I turned to my friends, their faces etched with fear. They had seen it too. We knew we should leave, but curiosity got the better of us. Mark, the bravest among us, approached the mirror, his breath creating a fog on the glass. He whispered, "Is anyone here?" Suddenly, the temperature in the room plummeted, and the mirror began to vibrate. We watched in disbelief as the cracks in the glass widened and the room seemed to twist and distort. The reflection in the mirror was no longer of our world. It was a dark, nightmarish realm. Panicking, we tried to leave the room, but the door slammed shut with an unholy force, trapping us inside. A guttural, otherworldly growl filled the room, and the mirror began to bleed a sinister red liquid. Lisa screamed, and we turned to see her reflection in the mirror. It was distorted, a grotesque, twisted version of herself. She clutched her head, screaming as if in unbearable pain, and then her reflection dragged her through the mirror. In an instant, she was gone. We pounded on the door, desperate to escape, but it wouldn't budge. Sarah's flashlight flickered and died, leaving us in darkness. Mark and I were paralyzed with fear, our breath visible in the freezing air. We heard Lisa's haunting voice echoing from the mirror, begging for help. A sinister laughter filled the room, and we turned to see a shadowy figure, an entity that defied description. It moved closer, and Mark shone his flashlight on it. The light revealed a grotesque, skeletal face and malevolent eyes. It reached out a bony hand towards me, and I felt an icy grip on my heart. With every ounce of strength, I managed to pry open the door, and we stumbled out of the room, slamming the door behind us. We raced down the stairs, our screams echoing through the mansion. But it wasn't over. As we reached the front door, it slammed shut before our eyes, locking us inside. We were trapped in a house that defied all logic and reason, a house that hungered for our souls. We found ourselves back in the room with the cursed mirror, but this time, there was no escape. The sinister figure drew closer, and its chilling laughter filled the room. I knew we were next, that there was no way out. Just as the entity reached for us, I closed my eyes and whispered a desperate plea for help. Suddenly, the room was filled with blinding light, and the mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces. We were thrown back, and when I opened my eyes, we were outside the mansion, safe. We never spoke of that night again. Lisa was gone, and we knew she was lost forever to that malevolent realm. The mansion disappeared that night, as if it had never existed. Halloween had gone horribly wrong, and I had a newfound understanding of the true horror that could exist in the world. Now, every Halloween, I avoid the old abandoned places. I stick to the well-lit streets and the safety of my own home, but I know that somewhere out there in the darkness, the malevolent forces that trapped us that night still lurk, waiting for their next victim. And I can't help but wonder, who will be the next to face a Halloween gone terribly wrong?